Welcome back to Real Family Secrets. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, because tonight, one unfinished sentence changed 4 lives in front of 400 people. Subscribe, and tell us where you're listening from. You're going to want to stay until the end. My name is Franklin Osei. 20 years ago, I started a logistics software company with 3 employees, 1 rented office, and a wife who told me she believed in me when nobody else did. 3 months ago, at our company's 20th anniversary gala, that same wife took a microphone to toast our marriage in front of 400 employees and investors. Then she looked across the ballroom at my head of business development and couldn't finish the word loyalty. Yolanda and I met in graduate school. Back then, neither of us had money, connections, or any reasonable idea how hard life was about to become. We had cheap takeout, borrowed furniture, and an apartment where the radiator screamed every winter like it was personally offended to be working. But we had each other, at least I thought we did. When I started the company, Yolanda was there for every uncertain year. She helped me proofread investor presentations at midnight. She answered customer calls when my first support employee quit. She reminded me to eat when I was working 18-hour days and calling it ambition. Over time, the company grew. 3 employees became 12. 12 became 50, then 50 became more than 300 people, spread across 4 offices. By our 20th year, we had a real board, serious investors, a downtown headquarters, and the sort of annual gala that required name cards, seating charts, and people whose job was to make sure the flowers matched the lighting. Yolanda had become part of the company's story. She wasn't an employee, but everyone knew her. She attended charity events, holiday parties, product launches, and every anniversary dinner we ever held. She was good at it too. She remembered spouses' names. She made junior employees feel noticed. She could stand next to a difficult investor and make him feel like he was the most interesting person in the room. For years I watched her do that and felt proud. I thought I was looking at the woman who had helped me build a life. Looking back, there were signs that something had changed. Nothing dramatic. Nothing I could have used to accuse anyone without sounding paranoid. Yolanda began attending more client dinners that I wasn't invited to. She started keeping her phone face down on the kitchen counter. She began getting ready for ordinary events with an attention to detail that felt less like confidence and more like preparation. I noticed all of it. I simply kept finding reasons not to ask. 20 years of marriage teaches you a dangerous habit. You become very good at explaining away the things that would hurt too much to understand clearly. The anniversary gala was held at the Hartwell Hotel downtown, in a ballroom with chandeliers big enough to look absurd in any other setting. 400 people attended. Employees, clients, board members, investors, former staff, people who had helped build the company, and people who had arrived only after it became successful. I wore a black tuxedo. Yolanda wore a silver evening dress she had bought specifically for the event. She looked beautiful. I told her so before we left the house. "Thank you," she said. Then she checked her phone before getting into the car. At the ballroom, she was warm with everyone. She smiled for photographs beside me. She held my arm while we greeted the board chairman. She laughed when our CFO made a joke she had heard at least 3 times before. But every few minutes, I noticed her eyes move toward the back of the room. Eventually, I followed her gaze. Desmond LaRue sat at table 19 with his wife, Simone. Desmond had been our head of business development for 6 years. I had hired him personally. He was sharp, persuasive, confident without being loud. He had helped land several major accounts and had earned the trust of people who were otherwise difficult to impress. He had also been to our house. He and Simone had joined us for dinner more than once. Yolanda had helped Simone plan a charity fundraiser last spring. At the time, none of that seemed strange. Good companies become communities. People overlap. Spouses become friends. That was the story I told myself. Dinner ended around 9. The lights dimmed slightly, and our events director stepped onto the stage to introduce the speeches. The chief financial officer spoke first, then our board chairman. Then a few longtime employees told stories from the early years, including one deeply exaggerated account of me sleeping under my desk during a product launch. The room laughed. I laughed too. Then the events director said, "And now, someone who has been part of this journey from the very beginning, Franklin's wife, Yolanda Osei." Everyone turned toward Yolanda. She stood beside me, adjusted the silver bracelet on her wrist, and walked toward the stage. She had given speeches before. She was good at them. But as she climbed the steps, I noticed her hands. They were shaking. She reached the podium and smiled at the audience. 20 years ago, she began, Franklin and I were living on ramen noodles, borrowed optimism, and a credit card that should probably have been taken away from us. The ballroom laughed warmly. We had no idea what we were doing. Franklin had a laptop, a dream, and an alarming confidence that people would eventually pay him for software. More laughter. And somehow, through all the late nights, the lost clients, the impossible payroll weeks, the office moves, the mistakes and the miracles, we made it here. She paused, looking around the ballroom. What I have learned over 20 years is that success is not really about the numbers. It's about the people who stay when things are hard. The people who keep believing when there is no proof yet. The people who understand that loyalty is not just... She stopped. At first, I thought she had simply lost her place. Then I saw her looking toward table 19. Desmond was looking back at her. Simone, sitting beside him, turned toward Yolanda with a puzzled expression. She followed her husband's line of sight, then looked at him. Yolanda swallowed hard. Loyalty is not just, she repeated. Her voice broke. A silence moved through the room, subtle at first. 400 people sensed the same thing without knowing what it was. Yolanda looked down at the podium, then back at Desmond. I'm sorry, she said into the microphone. I can't do this. She placed the microphone down, not carefully, not dramatically. Just quickly, like it had become too heavy to hold. Then she walked off the stage. Her heels echoed across the ballroom floor. People sat perfectly still, champagne glasses in hand, unable to decide whether they had just witnessed a personal crisis, a medical emergency, or something worse. I stood from my chair. I remember straightening my jacket. I remember placing my napkin beside my plate. I remember thinking, very clearly, that I had no idea what was happening. Then I followed my wife into the hallway. I found Yolanda sitting on a small velvet bench near the coat check, her hands pressed against her face. Yolanda, I said. She looked up at me. Her mascara had begun to run, and for the first time that night, she looked less like the elegant woman from the stage, and more like someone who had reached the end of an impossible lie. What happened? I asked. I couldn't say it, she whispered. Say what? Loyalty. I couldn't stand in front of everyone and talk about loyalty when Desmond was sitting there. For a moment, I didn't understand her. Why does Desmond matter? Yolanda closed her eyes. Because Desmond and I have been involved for 8 months. The hallway seemed to narrow around us. 8 months? I asked. She nodded. It started at the spring leadership conference. It was supposed to be one mistake. Then it became something else. I tried to stop. I kept telling myself I would tell you. But you didn't. No. I sat beside her for a few seconds. Beyond the hallway doors, I could hear the muffled sound of the ballroom. Someone had started playing soft music, probably hoping it would make the silence feel less obvious. Does Simone know? I don't think so. Does Desmond know you were going to confess? No. I stood up. Franklin, please don't. You already made this public when you walked onto that stage. I'm not going to create a scene, but Desmond's wife deserves the same truth I just received. I returned to the ballroom. The conversation had resumed in fragments, but no one was pretending the event was normal anymore. I walked to table 19. Desmond stood as I approached. He looked pale. Franklin, he said. Desmond, I need to speak with you in the hallway. Simone looked from him to me. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not from certainty yet, but from instinct. Is everything okay? She asked. I looked at her. No, I said. It isn't. Desmond followed me into the hallway. Yolanda was still sitting on the bench near the coat check. The moment Desmond saw her face, he understood. He stopped walking. She told me, I said. 8 months, since the spring conference. Franklin, I can explain. I don't need an explanation from you. I hired you. I trusted you with clients, employee livelihoods, company information, and my family. You came into my home. You sat at my table. You looked me in the eye. Desmond said nothing. Go back inside. Find your wife. Tell her the truth yourself. You have 5 minutes before I do it for you. Please, Desmond said. Not here. You chose here. You chose my anniversary gala. You chose to sit in a ballroom while my wife tried to give a speech about loyalty. Desmond looked at Yolanda one last time. She whispered, I'm sorry. Then he walked back toward the ballroom. I didn't follow him immediately. I stood in the hallway beside Yolanda and listened to the ballroom door open. A few minutes later, I saw Simone leave through the main entrance. She did not run, she did not scream. She walked slowly, with her coat over one arm and her head held straight. The way people walk when holding themselves together is the only thing they can still control. The gala ended early. My executive team handled the guests with a professionalism I will never forget. They thanked people for coming, made vague comments about a family emergency, and arranged transportation for several investors who had suddenly become very interested in leaving. Yolanda and I drove home separately. We spoke the next morning at our kitchen table. There were no more surprises, only details: the conference, the messages, the dinners, the hotel room she had called a girls' weekend, the lies told in ordinary voices. 8 months had fit neatly inside the life I thought I understood. Yolanda and I separated within 2 weeks. Desmond submitted his resignation before our board meeting the following Monday. He wrote that personal circumstances had made it impossible for him to continue in his role. I accepted the resignation. I did not fight for him. I did not offer a farewell statement. I did not let the company turn a betrayal into a public spectacle beyond what it had already become. Simone filed for divorce several months later. I know that because she wrote to me once. Her message was short. I am sorry this happened to you too. Thank you for making him tell me the truth. I read it 3 times before replying. I wish none of us had needed to learn it that way. The company survived. In fact, it did better than I expected. People moved on, new leaders stepped up, and the work continued. But some nights, I still think about the unfinished sentence. Loyalty is not just. She never completed it. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe the truth had finally become too visible to force back into a polished speech. 20 years is a long time to share with someone, long enough for a person to become part of the story you tell about yourself. But I learned that night that a story is not the same as the truth, and sometimes the truth arrives in front of 400 people, under chandeliers, with a microphone still turned on. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real family stories, and tell us in the comments, would you have made Desmond tell his wife that night, or waited until morning?
Cash smell on my fingertips like I've been counting under pressure. 3 names on the bill tonight. Pay attention. I treat a beat like a courtroom. Walk in and raise the evidence. Bars come laminated clean, still they cut with negligence. My pen got a split personality. It'll hug you, then it'll swing. Butterfly doors on the floor, watch how they hinges sing. I'm past next up, I'm the reason the next got anxiety. They watching my steps like the floor got a private gallery. I don't do friendly handshakes, turn the oddest. Too many real ones, turn fake when the profit deposits. Brain on gourmet, stomach on midnight diner. I make crumbs look like a feast, call me the food designer. Say you outside, prove it, don't narrate it. If you want smoke, bring lungs, don't ventilate it. They love a rumor till they standing in front of them. Now it's yes mom, no sir, whole tone humble. Talk slick, get measured, tape on your mouth. I do big numbers, then step out the count. Head so heavy with plans I don't say. Hands stay clean, but the ink don't play. If it's not stamped, it's not happening, period. I'm not a maybe, I'm the mirror you fearing. I'm sweet in the photo, but wicked in the caption. Switching my cadence like outfits, no zipper, just fashion. He want a nice girl, tell him go order one. I'm the glitch in the system, still I'm the sorted one. I talk in commas, then turn it to exclamation. Name ringing so hard, it needed some vaccination. Look, don't clock my pockets if you can't clock in. He chatty like a stylist, I need results, not win. I don't hint, I point, finger got accuracy. Try me, I'll turn your tough talk into a stutter magically. He want control, boy, please. That's adorable. I sign my own checks, attitude non-refundable.
Money don't change you, it just turns the lights on. Now everybody see what you've been hiding with the mic on. I keep receipts in my memory, numbers in the safe. If you cross me, it's quiet, but it won't be safe. Talk slick, get measured, tape on your mouth. I do big numbers and step out the count. Head so heavy with plans I don't say. Hands stay clean, but the ink don't play. If it's not stamped, it's not happening, period. I'm not a maybe, I'm the mirror you fearing. I'm not a maybe, I'm the mirror you fearing.
If you heard your name, good. That means you finally read it.